And I'm like, hey everybody, welcome to Sajam's Capcom Cup bracket breakdown stream. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope you guys have been enjoying your day. We're going to have a long weekend of Street Fighter V action, and I can't wait to jump into it. And then I click this scene and we start my bracket. So here's what happened, if you guys don't know. There was a switch up in the brackets from the last time I did bracket predictions, which means those predictions don't matter at all. It's like, it's all made up. Last time, Angry Bird was seed 31 because he had more CPT points than Crossover, but Crossover got removed because he couldn't get his visa in time. He applied immediately after he won. He couldn't get it. It takes a long time to get a visa from South America to the US, from a lot of countries, especially if you're not from Chile, because Chile is Chile. So instead, we had a replacement in Picoro, who has more CPT points actually. More CPT points than not only Crossover, but also Angry Bird. So because of that, Angry Bird got shifted up to 32nd seed. So instead of Angry Bird being the 31st seed, he now gets the pleasure of playing Tokido first round. The rest of the bracket hasn't changed. But that's a pretty big switch. Particularly because Tokido and Angry Bird played not that long ago. If you guys aren't familiar with Angry Bird Zeku, he is super good. And I think he actually has like the optimal playstyle to be a Zeku player. Like he has the kind of playstyle that allows you to be a Zeku player because he's like a super fluid, aggressive player. When I used to watch him play Akuma, that was the one thing I thought about him, is that he's really good at like slipping in and out of like an offensive/defensive playstyle really fast, right? But he's up against the model competitor in Tokido. Tokido he's a beast. To be honest with you, I was a little worried for Tokido when he had to fight a player from DR because his record against them is a little inconsistent. I mean, I feel like a lot of players from Asia have like a weird playstyle clash with players from DR, or actually just Central or South America. It tends to be like that now that I think about it. But I think he's already beaten Angry Bird. He beat him at Rebel Kumite. I think it was 2-0 when they played. I don't know if they played a second time there. I only saw one set from them. And if there's one place that actually has a kind of a number of Zeku player, it's Japan. They have a decent amount of pretty strong Zeku players. So I think that in terms of matchup experience, Tokido's probably one of the more prepared players on this list in terms of like having access to Zeku players if he wants to train with them. Not to say that any of them are as talented as Angry Bird, but just that they exist helps him practice, right? So for that reason, I think in this match, I have Tokido getting the W. I think it's an unfortunate shift for Angry Bird that he ended up there, especially since they played so recently. So there's footage for Tokido to check. It's an unfortunate player matchup in general. I think very few players have a good matchup against Tokido. One of them is actually Gotch-kun. Gotch-kun has had a really good record against Tokido, especially in the last few times they played. He beat him at Seam in the finals. I think that's what that was like the time that I just saw him get dismantled the most by a Rashid player. There's actually, I think, a number of things in that matchup that give Akuma a lot of trouble. I think there's a number of things that kind of add up to be difficult for that character. In particular, when your max range is Akuma on crouching medium kick, he can jump out, and if you throw a fireball, his jumping heavy punch hits so low so fast that it clips Akuma, and he's fine on the ground versus Akuma. Like Crouching Fierce is actually like a really difficult move for Akuma to whiff punish, because he has to focus on it so much, and then Rashid starts to go to all his other options. In particular, I think one of Tokido's only cited weaknesses is like weak anti-airs sometimes, because he focuses on the ground a lot, and when it comes to like a character like Rashid, he's gonna force you to do that, right? So it's pretty tough to see. Anyway, his opponent is Big Bird. Man, and what sucks too is that Angry Bird and Big Bird are right next to each other too. Yeah, so Gotch-kun versus versus Big Bird first round. Man, I keep doing that. I keep switching the names. I needed more sleep last night. If this stream was fucking 2 hours later, I'll tell you. Yeah, Gotch-kun versus Big Bird is an interesting match. I actually think this is a pretty even match. They've played a couple of times this year, right? I think they played on a couple of times, and I think Gotch-kun won the last time they played. I think it was 3-2 at Rebel Kumite the last time they played. Gotch-kun got the W. I think this is a pretty even matchup, though. What's interesting is that there was a stream in Japan where they kind of did their fantasy brackets, very loose version of it, and Gotch-kun said that because Big Bird is not a crazy Rashid player, he feels more confident against him than like someone like Oil King, who's a little wild. But yeah, this is This is tough. I think this is pretty 50-50. And I think a lot of this bracket rides on this match. Because if Big Bird wins, I think Tokido has a much better chance against Big Bird, even though he's lost to him before. I think Gotch-kun, his record against Tokido is pretty rough. So, you know, obviously Tokido, I'm sure, is doing a lot of Rashid practice since he's going to have to fight Rashid second round, most likely. He can't beat Tokido, bro? Who are you talking about? When you say he can't beat Tokido, who do you mean? Are you talking about Big Bird, who's beaten him before? You're talking about Gotch-kun, who's beaten him before? Or are you talking about Problem X, who's beaten him before? All three of the people you might be talking about have beaten him before. What do you mean he can't beat Tokido? He already has. I think I was really indecisive about this match the first time I picked it, to be honest. I was really indecisive, and I think this time I'm feeling the same kind of way, and I'm going to give it to Gotch-kun. I can't really call this. I think it's a coin flip in terms of who will win. To me, they both kind of have like a similar play style. The one thing about Gotch-kun is that I think he is a more slow defensive player because of his background. He used to be a Sagat player in Street Fighter 4. Really solid, clean anti-airs, defensive style, and he's really good about cutting off spots on the screen. I think Big Bird is like a much more like fluid player. He's really like, he leans in and out of offense and defense really easily. And he has like a very specific style to him, right? When you watch Big Bird, he has like this very obvious flair and a very obvious like Big Bird style. Like when I watch him, I'm like, yes, that's him. You know what I mean? He kind of has that like flair about him that makes him really fun to watch and really interesting. But I think I'm going to give the edge to Gotch-kun just because of the last time they played. This sets up a very interesting winners and losers bracket match off of these matches right here, right? This is an interesting match. I don't think we really have a lot of data about how this will go. At least recent data anyway, right? Oil King and Mochi, they were finals of the Chinese tournament? They were in finals of, yeah, it was the Chinese tournament because Taiwan won and they cut the stream. They cut that shit immediately. Now I remember. That's right. Taiwan got the W. Oil King won the tournament and they cut the feed. And China was like, get that shit out of here. Chinese, Taipei, they were like, cut the stream. Get it out of here. We can't let people see this. Oil King got the W there. It was a long set, right? It was like a 3-2, 3-2 kind of a set with Momochi playing Akuma. Like, it's interesting because this is a very traditional matchup in the sense that it's like the wild style of Oil King. He's a crazy man, right? I think most famously, he has a lot of pretty wild uppercuts. Like, he's known for just the wild DPs, right? And just like a really like abrasive style. And then you have Momochi, who's like characterized as a very slow defensive player. The big thing about Momochi is that his whiff punishes are excellent. He plays characters who, even if they don't have the best grounded footsies at initiating pokes, they're really good at counter poking or whiff punishing and then getting like a lot of reward off of it. I think that's like kind of like Ken's play style. I think that has to be Colleen's play style a lot of the times, even though her fierce is like, it can also poke. Man, there's a helicopter right there. Yeah, this matchup is pretty hard for me to call, I feel like. I know I've said that already, and I'll say that a lot more before this is over. And also, last Capcom Cup, I don't feel like Oil King performed that well. I think that there are some players that don't perform that well at events, like Capcom Cup or like Evo. Yolochi is slow. Yeah, but he's a little crazy too. I'm going to go with Oil King. Knuckle Dudang versus Itabashi. Abigail. Man, you didn't even put Zangief in his name? You put him, disrespect him like that? Yeah, Knuckle Dudang has a good player matchup here, or good character matchup here. Although what's interesting about this match is that Knuckle Doo is traditionally a very feel-based young player, which is usually like it's kind of like a rare combination of things. Usually young players are very like textbook, they're very tech heavy, they're very like they're net play warriors who just know every matchup, every bit of frame data. They're like dweebs. Knuckle Doo's not really that style as much as like he's very feel based a lot of the times. Up against Itabashi, who's kind of similar. Dude is always churning, and he's a pretty wild guy in general, right? He had a lot of success last Capcom Cup. He was fourth place I think in the tournament, and he did really well there. A little low. He's much, I think, lower seed this time than he was last year. Fifth place, was it last year? Okay. I think that this matchup favors Knuckle Doo in terms of character matchup, although I think personally Knuckle Doo struggles a little bit against big body sometimes. I think he's had some close sets against Abigail players or other big body characters in the past. They're usually pretty close. I think that a lot of people would call this one an easy one for Knuckle Doo. I think that this is more like 60-40 than people give it credit for. But I still think he has the advantage. in the matchup. And I still think that he'll probably get the W, particularly because it's the 3 out of 5 set right out of the gate. I think he'll be all right. If it was 2 out of 3, I think I might feel a little bit more strongly about Itabashi Abigail. But like the thing about Itabashi is that he's played big body characters for so long, and he makes every pixel of health matter because he could kill you anytime, right? He's like the master of gambling in that sense. And so if you give him one chip, like he can just do it. He's a monster. He's very difficult to deal with, but he has a tough player matchup here. Fudo versus Chris T. This is a matchup that's very interesting. When I was discussing this last time, a lot of people were very upset that I suggested that Chris T could do it. A lot of people, just the idea that Chris T can win. I appreciate it. We made it about 3 seconds before someone said, if it was 2 hours later, Chris T would win. I appreciate it. I was waiting for that. Chris T has a much better chance here than most people give him credit for. In particular, like Fudo is a very slow, very measured player, right? He's very emotional and he relies a lot on his reactions. And despite that, I think he's very on. He's a player who's very rarely not on, where he doesn't perform well, right? Which is rare for someone who's emotional, which is rare for someone who relies on like reactional ground game style, right? But he still does really well all the time. Christie, on the other hand, is extremely explosive, right? Like he's one of those players that when you think about Ken's firepower, he really makes that character look like he can kill you at any time, even though Ken is weaker than he has been in this game. In general, Christie is also really clutch. When you put him low on life, I think that there are lots and lots of times where he just becomes like unkillable when he gets low on life. Despite Sleepgate, I know a lot of people are. Today is like the day where I'm like, Chris T could do this. Everybody's like, fuck you, Sajam. I think this is a closer match than people give him credit for. But I think Fudo will get the W. Shanghai versus CJ Truth. You know what I like about this match is that I feel like for a mirror match to be in the first round, these two players play kind of similar. When I think about Shanghai, his biggest strength is that he's like fundamentally extremely sound. And in the way he's fundamental is the way he plays ground game and the way he plays Street Fighter. He's not very like matchup heavy player. When you think about Shanghai, I don't think about his strength ever being character matchup knowledge or something, right? At least in this game. What I think about him is like his ability to use his reactions to force people to fight him on the ground the way he wants and constantly rotate between like poking, dashing, jumping, reacting to like whiff punishes. Like he's really good about rotating like the core skills you need on the ground to win in any fighting game. Not just this game, any fighting game, right? Like his fundamentals on the ground are really solid, and then when he knocks you down, like obviously he knows how to run offense extremely well. Like Shanghai is one of the few players whose reactions are so good that he can force you to just play exactly the kind of game he wants to all the time. But what's interesting is I think CJ is the same kind of way. Like if you think about CJ, he's a very antsy, like twitch heavy guy, right? He's like very, very reaction based, and he does the same thing. His reactions are so good. Like you can't jump at him very easily. His anti-airs him and Shanghai both actually, anti-airs are incredible. He's so good that he just forces you to play on the ground all the time. But just because of his experience in general, like how well he usually does in the mirror, I feel like, I think I'd give a slight edge to Shanghai here. I think this is a pretty tough match to call though. It's funny because in the chat room, I've seen CJ takes it easy, and I've also seen Shanghai destroys him, no question. It tells me I'm right about the way I feel about the match. Socko versus Nemo, a match that I'm personally very torn on. Nemo hasn't had as much success this year. He's like traveled more than I ever remember him travel, but this one's interesting. This year has not been as good for Nemo as it was last year. I think Urian is a little weaker overall, but in this matchup in particular, Socko has had an excellent year. Multiple premieres this year that he has won. This has probably been the best that I've seen Socko play that I can remember in a long, long time. And Socko as a player is exceptionally good at the close range footsie game. I think his biggest strength is playing footsies right up next to you, like the jab range. He's so good at playing that range. And the big advantage that he has is that he typically picks characters that if they win footsies, they have a very high reward for what they get. A lot of the times, right? I think like Evil Ryu is like this. I think that like Minot is like this a lot of the times too, right? Extremely good at playing close up. If you think about Justin plays from like this far away with Minot, right? But Socko, I think, walks in and plays like a super close footsie range. I think that that's great. And it's like, he is, to me, the absolute best at that range. But that's the exact range where Nemo will just hit you with some crazy shit. You know what I mean? That's like the one scary thing about Nemo in this situation. The other thing is that both of his characters, like if he chooses to play G, which I don't know that he will, but G does well against Minot, and I think Urian's fine against Minot as well. For that reason, I think that both of his characters do well against Socko. So normally, I feel like if I didn't think about the character matchup here, I'd probably give the edge to Socko by a pretty large margin. I think the character matchup evens things out a lot, right? I think that it even things out a lot. Despite like Socko being incredibly exceptional on the ground up close, like you're playing against Nemo, who is just so Neanderthalic. He's like the button barbarian, right? Like he never lets you get away with anything. He's just constantly doing exactly what he wants. This is a hard match for me to call because of that. I think that if Socko moves on here, this part of the bracket is very interesting, right? This part of the bracket is very interesting because I think I like Socko against both of them. Sokko's chances here are a little weird. Nemo, I think, has a higher chance of losing one of these matches, particularly right here, because I don't think he'll beat Shanghai, and I don't think Fudo is a little hard too. I don't like this or character matchup for him. But I think given that it's 3 out of 5, I think last time I went with Nemo. And I'm a huge Nemo fan, so I want him to do well in the tournament, but he'll have to do that from losers. Haitani versus Banchan is interesting too, right? Because I feel like we haven't seen a lot of that like success for them this year compared to what we normally expect from them. They've had pretty good years, nothing too crazy, nothing too out of the ordinary. But I'm a bit interested in what Banchan chooses to do in terms of character choice here, right? Especially because he's been kind of back and forth about what character he picks constantly. I think sometimes that gives him some trouble. Sometimes that works out in his favor. Yeah, a lot of people are saying Sagat. I don't think it's that unlikely that he tries Sagat, but he also could just play something else. He could just play Karen. He could just play, like, there's, you never know with him. But he has had a lot of success with that character against Akuma, and he's almost beaten Tokido with it as well. I think I'm going to give him the edge. I think I gave him the edge last time too. Even though Haitani is like one of those players who is extremely he's extremely good at just bullying offensive play style. Like when I think about him, I think about like the god of Japanese fighting games like 3S. Like I think about that Haitani where he just got in your face and demolished you. But I think Banchan is like really good at being the wall. I think that's like a strength Sagat players had to pick up. All right. Fujimura versus Picoro. This is interesting, right? Because originally Fujimura had to play Angry Bird, and I think he was a little concerned about that, right? Like, I think he kind of expressed that he was like maybe not sure. He had struggled a little bit against some other Zeku players. I think that the character matchup, Fujimura, besides like Problem X, usually does fine against Bison. When I was thinking about this matchup, it's probably one of the matchups we have the least amount of data on. Like, we don't have player data matchups here or anything really, right? The only thing we can really go off is like experience and character matchup, and I think Fujimura probably has the edge here. Most of you guys seem to agree. Kaaba versus Cien is a matchup I was torn on for a long time. I didn't really know what to think about this because Kaaba has a dope year. He had a really strong year this year. He performed super well at EVO. He's performed really well at a lot of different events. His guile is incredibly good. So the interesting thing about this match is that, in general, I think a lot of players from Asia tend to struggle with players from DR. They struggle with PR Balrog for a long time. They struggle sometimes with players from South America or Central America. There's a playstyle that seems to have a clashing difficulty for a lot of Asian players. And it's not just in this game. It's in, like, I feel like almost every fighting game, right? In like KOF, you see it happen a lot. It happens in what was my other example that I just had? Tekken. You see it happen in Tekken as well, because it's like a style of play that is unrelenting. It's like a very like passionate play style, and also like, hey, dumbass, I'm just gonna do what I want, kind of a play style, right? That's what like the play style is, and I think that because of that, I tend to sort of favor them like in the matchup, in a lot of matchups for that reason. When it comes to Cien, he had the closest match with anybody last year with Mena, except Tokido. He was super close, almost beat him. He did a lot of prepping for that matchup, and it was very obvious, right? That's the one thing about Cien. And the big thing about Cien is that he is, of anybody in this tournament, the number one example of a strategist, right? He's like the best strategist in the tournament. When it comes to creating like his own unique strategies or coming up with game plans or learning how to beat people with just training mode and just your own thoughts and ideas about how, like, you know, the event was going to go. Like, Cien is like the strongest at that, right? Even if he can't net play with other people, even if there's nobody else in, like, you know, in Singapore that like he wants to play with or whatever, like he can do it with training mode alone. Just coming up with setups, right? Like he did with Gen back in the day, coming up with strategies and ideas and counterpick characters like he did in Street Fighter 4 or whatever. That's one thing that Cien is excellent at, right? Like he's the absolute best at it. So that's why I feel like in tournaments like this, Cien tends to be really good against this guy, maybe this guy, and then once he gets later in the tournament, he has to rely on like his raw like decision making and play, and his strategy can't be formulated as much, right? If he makes it to top 8, he has time to sit down and prep the night before for a new strategy. But if the bracket goes like what he doesn't expect and stuff, that's when I think that he will struggle a little bit more. So that's the thing about Cien, right? He's the same way in Street Fighter 4 with Gen. He's really good about like formulating strategies and ideas independent of everybody else, and that makes him very hard to prepare for and also very hard to beat. There's advantages that both players have naturally. The only issue in me giving it to Cien is that he has been playing so much Shadowverse. In fact, at Seam, he looked real whack compared to his normal self. Because, I mean, Shadowverse had a $1 million tournament that he was almost qualified for. He was extremely close. He got second place at the Shadowverse tournament there. First place qualified you. I mean, he made a smart choice as far as I'm concerned. But that also means that he has not been playing as much Street Fighter as everybody else. So, yeah, I don't know. This is a hard one for me to call. I think I'm going to give the edge here to Kaaba. Because Cien's a card game player. Cien got soft. Yeah, what an idiot. He tried to win $1 million. Cien's a dumbass. Man, the stream chat will never cease to amaze me. Man, Cien, why would you make such a smart decision? You're already qualified for the finals for Capcom Cup, and you instead try to win $1 million before the tournament started? Idiot. Dumbasses. We move down to NL. NL versus Storm Kubo. NL is a super active player. I think that when I think about the Korean players, if I think about their playstyle as a region, I just think about constant action. Super high APM players. Even their defensive players are like super active. They never stop moving, right? Think about their like defensive playstyles. They still go like super all over the place. They're backdashing, forward dashing, whiffing jabs, constant motion, right? That's the one thing about NL. Super fast-paced player, even on Cammy. I think that's one thing that you think about, right? That character is already a fast character. He makes Cammy look super fast. Storm Kubo, on the other hand, he's the fucking maniac. He is an absolute barbarian. He's like, I feel like if I turn on Braveheart, I would see him there. He'd be ready to fight for his life, and he would kill all those motherfuckers. He is a maniac. He's always got that wild look in his eyes, and he always has, like, the it factor, right? He has the just, like, it could happen. You know what I mean? Like, did you hear what happened to NL Storm Kubo? No, man. It happened, dude. Storm Kubo, he was down 80%. He tried a V reversal, he armor, he was dead. And I'm like, oh, no, he's dead. Like, it's just how it happens. Storm Kubo has that factor. But NL, I think, is usually very, very good against Abigail. I think a lot of Cammy players are, like, a little scared about this matchup, right? It's a very volatile matchup. It's very easy for Cammy to just explode and have a really great round and just done. However, I think NL is still the favorite here just because of how good he is at this matchup and just how his year has been really impressive. It could happen, though. You know what I mean? It could happen. Storm Kubo is a maniac. He knows how to gamble, and he knows how to, like, just make anything count. This match is sick, dude. Daigo versus Punk. I don't even know what to say about this matchup. I don't even know where to start about this matchup. There's a lot of things to talk about. Daigo lost Punk at a tournament not that long ago. I'm trying to think what it was. Maybe CEO? Or maybe Evo it was. I don't remember which it was. And he said, like, you know, I lost to Punk in the tournament. but I'm actually okay with that because I'm a big fan of Punk. Like, I like the way he plays. And I think that that's very interesting to me. I think that this match has potential to be one of the best matchups, most interesting matchups in the tournament. I think it has like chance. It could be just a slobber knocker, like just this really fun, wild matchup between the two of them. Anybody that you're a fan of, I think you tend to like watching them, and you tend to be better against them because you're a fan of them. You watch them play all the time. You're experienced with how they play. You pay attention to what they do and stuff. So that's one thing to consider about Daigo versus Punk. The other thing to consider is that Daigo is a weird strategist in a way. When I said Cien was a strategist, I meant in the traditional sense. Daigo Umehara is like the drunken master monk or something, right? You know how they kind of just wobble around and then they're just like, bam, and they hit you and you're like, where the fuck did that come from? That's what I think about when it comes to Daigo. Like, the way he formulates strategies and ideas is so weird. He talked about like his preparation for Kimono Michi against Tokido. And he was like, there's a lot of strong Akuma players that I could train with. But instead, I'm going to take a very young Akuma player in Otani. I'm going to train him to be the best against Guile there ever was. Then I'm going to beat him so bad until he's the best against Guile. Then I'll be ready for Tokido. And it's like, what the fuck do you mean? He's just weird, man. He has such a weird way about thinking about strategy, about the game, his decision making. And when it comes to the match, he is extremely insistent on his own strat. Like, when he commits, he commits. When it doesn't matter whether it's uppercuts or ume flash kicks. It doesn't matter if it's like the way he's preparing for the match. It doesn't matter if it's like taking 5 command throws in a row. Like, when he thinks about an idea, he is committed to trying it. And he doesn't care where it is. He doesn't care if he loses or not. He's like, this is what I'm trying. This is my strategy. I'm sticking to it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It makes him one of the strangest anomalies in fighting games. But it's just why he's so good. And then you have Punk, on the other hand, who a lot of people were like, oh, this guy's not playing so well this year. Where's Punk at? He's having like a character crisis after having one of the most dominant 2017s ever. Like, who has had that good of a year that he had in 2017, right? Then he comes back to Karen, and in the last like 3 or 4 months, Punk has looked really good, right? He's looked like exceptionally good, almost like his old self again. It's like he's back into the form that he was before, beating like super strong players left and right. And so now you're like, well, Punk has been really, really good lately, but he's up against Daigo, who's a fucking weirdo. Like, you never know what Daigo is going to do. Especially, Red Bull. A lot of people bring up Red Bull. Punk played amazing there. He looked really... Every time I've seen him play in the last 3 or 4 months with Karen, he's looked so good. And when he's counterpicked characters, it hasn't looked like he's trying to run from Karen and pick another character to try to just find some success. It looks like he counterpicks with a reason instead of just being like, oh shit, I guess I'll try them. It's like, all right, this is the time where my other character will work. Like, it's much more confident to me. And I think that when Punk has confidence, he's extremely good. So that's why this match is so fascinating to me. I hope that I'm on for this match. I'd love to talk about this match. I could talk about it forever. That's why I've seen both out. I feel like Doctor Strange, right? I feel like I've seen the 14 million outcomes that could happen at the Capcom Cup bracket. I've done all the research. I've thought about how this could go. I've seen every timeline. And for that reason, Punk's moving on to the bracket. All right. Problem X versus Mena. This matchup is so crazy, man. It's Capcom Cup versus Capcom Cup champion versus the Evo champion. I root for Asians like Problem X. Problem X from Brooklyn. He's an American, all right? I want to see him tweeting about how 2 hours is too long. Anyway, we'll get into the match. So, this match is so weird, right? Because although a lot of people have counted out Mena, I don't think that he has bad chances at Capcom Cup this year against a ton of players. The issue is that Problem X has good character matchups and has had an amazing year. Right? That's the one thing about Problem. This year, he has looked super studied and prepared for every event. Man, he has looked fucking good. This is a weird match to think about, right? Because you have, like, Mena's playstyle, which is, like, we talked about this earlier. He has traces of that, like, I'm going to play how I want style. And you have Problem X, which is just a really calculated, well-thought-out player. He's really good at measuring risk-reward. And in this matchup, he'll pick Abigail probably against the Birdie. For that reason, it's like, I think Problem X probably has the character advantage. And I think this year he's been playing a little bit better. So I'm probably going to give the edge here to Problem. But this is a lot like how I feel about Chris T. Fudo, where everybody in my chat room's like, this is an easy match to call. And I'm like, I don't know, man. This shit's going to be close. Phenom versus LCQ. We can't do much predicting here, huh? The only thing we can do about this matchup is talk about Phenom, think about who the LCQ winner could be, and also measure one interesting factor. The LCQ factor, right? So the LCQ factor is that you don't know who you're going to play. And you don't know who you're going to fight against, right? And so because of that, you can't really prepare for them until the night before. I think some players, this can be a big issue. I think some players, it doesn't matter that much. Phenom, to me, is the kind of guy that's like, what the fuck do you mean I have to play the LCQ winner? He's like, what the fuck do you mean I have to play the LCQ winner? He's like, this shit, fuck, man. Phenom is that kind of guy, but also Phenom's the kind of guy that like people count out and he does well. We obviously don't know. And betting on the LCQ is very, like, it is a crapshoot, right? You don't know the player matchup. You know, let's say that in your head you're like, well, if the LCQ winner is EJZ, I think that he'll beat Phenom. It's like, sure, but what if the LCQ winner is Gamerby? Or what if the LCQ winner is Smug? Or what if the LCQ winner is Alex Myers? Or what if the LCQ, you know, etc. There's like a million people, right? If Alex Myers wins, I'll eat my own face. That sounds awful. Don't do that. I'll give it to LCQ. Just because. I don't think this LCQ will make a run like last year, though. I'll tell you what. Justin Wong versus Valorant. All right. Let's think about their chances here. Justin against Cammy, I feel like it's pretty 50-50, but he's really good about frustrating people and really good about like annoying them and to frustration. That's kind of his thing. I called him Father Time because time is on his side, right? That's the one thing about him. He's extremely good at playing the clock. He's extremely good about frustrating and making people upset. And he has incredible ground game, right? That's the thing about him. Incredibly good ground game. Very poised. His orb control has gotten better since he's gone on throughout the year. Very high seed in this tournament. And he's at a great 2018. Twitter memes aside. Valorant, on the other hand, this is a little hard to call. He's a very talented player, even though he's this high up in CPT rankings, right? Even though he's all the way up here. Extremely talented player, and he's placed well this year. And he has like that active, super aggressive play style. He could definitely do this against Justin. Am I trying to suggest that the same Sleepgate joke over and over is not as funny as the roadies think? I would never suggest such a thing. I'm sure that the 18th time they posted it, it's already been great. I already made my own jokes about it. It's too late. Justin Wong. I think that he has pretty strong poise in a matchup like this. And I don't think he gets taken out here. Well, look, a lot of you guys are already being like, oh, this match is easy to call, blah, blah. Like, I think a lot of you guys are just jumping the gun. And I agree with you. Luffy wins. All right, so let's move down to the losers bracket. And just... we can't be so fast, but just as fast I can think Chizopath for the 13 months. Thanks very much for the subscription. Now, let's be serious for a second. Luffy and Mongo have a long history. I think they've played 3 times already at Capcom Cup. 3 times in a row. 3 different, or maybe not in a row. 3 times, different times at Capcom Cups. Luffy has won every time. I believe the history is that Luffy has not lost in tournament to Mongo since 2011. Think about it like this. Mongo in Street Fighter 4 played Yang, which is one of the best counter, like by the end, right? It was one of the best counter picks to Rose. You have to remember that was one of the characters people were like, if you want to beat Rose, you got to play Yang, right? And he still lost to Luffy when they played. Losers, you guys want to do some losers? Losers bracket? You know, I always watch a lot of other esports, and they always call it the upper and lower bracket. I think that's disingenuous. If you've lost, you've lost. It sucks to suck, but life goes on. Big ol' losers bracket. We call this the 2 hours of sleep bracket. All right. See what I did there, chat room? Angry Bird versus Big Bird, the battle of the birds. Have they played in tournament? I can't remember them ever playing in tournament. I've seen them play on their stream and stuff. That was a while ago, man. That was like when Zeku was first out, I feel like, the first time I saw it, when I was watching them play each other on their stream. I feel like this is probably 50-50. I don't know what they would say about it, but I feel like this is probably what I would guess this matchup is. I'll give it to Angry Bird. Momochi versus Itabashi. Momochi, I feel like his slow and steady style is usually fine in a matchup like this. It can get a little crazy near the end. Man, how are they 25th and 24th seeds? That's pretty crazy. Momochi's been focused on a lot of other things besides Street Fighter. He's been trying to build the Shinobiism. He's been trying to work on like Sky Studio. He's been focusing on a lot of other stuff. But he's a world-class Street Fighter player. Always has been, right? So, sorry, Brutus. Christ versus CJ Truth. I don't know. Man, I hope that they don't have to actually play in losers bracket. I hope I'm wrong. And these are both good. Young, extremely solid players. Very reaction-based, very Twitch-based. This is a tough one to call. I'm sure that these two have also had sets throughout the years. Depends on which CJ Truth shows up. I'll give him the edge. Nemo versus Haitani. You know, the thing about Haitani is that I think he is a fellow bruiser. I think in that particular playstyle, I think Nemo usually would have the edge. I'm not necessarily sure that this time he will, but I feel like usually that's what I would give him. Maybe I should look to see if they when the last time they played it. Can't have Nemo going 0-2. That's off brand. No, delivering the truth is on brand. Nemo won this matchup. Is this the only time they played? In Rage. Well, they seems like they're 1-1 from this. Ugh, this is tough. I'm going to give it to Nemo, I think. I think it's unlikely that he loses a slugfest. But we'll see. Cien here, this is man, it really depends on which Cien shows up. To be honest, I feel like he might win in winners. It's very close. I really don't want Cien to do badly this tournament, but the way he played at Cien was pretty disappointing. I'll give it to Cien. Atlas Bear, Storm Kubo versus Daigo. I think that's a pretty easy give to Daigo here, right? Actually, to be honest with you, this is an interesting match because if Punk loses here and he's up against Storm Kubo, Punk could get smoked. Mana versus Phenom. Oh, man. Wait a minute. So, I forgot that Phenom and Problem are in the same side of the bracket. So is Luffy, technically. He's in that section of the bracket. This could also be the LCQ winner against Mena. This is a 50-50 match. These two players are both very good. I'll give it the edge to Mena. I feel like just because, well, no, I'm giving the edge to Phenom because of character experience. Valorant versus Mongo. I wonder what kind of state Mongo would be in if he lost to Luffy again. Would he be that upset? This could definitely not go his way. I feel like this is a 50-50. Man, oh man, oh man. I think I'd give the edge here to Mr. Magoo. Okay, we're back to the winner's bracket. This match, there's a lot of lore here on this match. So Tokido versus Scotch-kun they've had a few sets. Most recently, Gotch-kun has seemed to have the better of Tokido, right? He beat him at, what was it? Seam, I think they played at Red Bull Kumite? Big Toke lost to him there. He's in general struggled a little bit with Rashid this year. I wouldn't say struggled is the right word, but compared to the other characters that he's played against, this is one where he's struggled a little bit more. And in particular, Gotch-kun has given him some issues. Unfortunately for Tokido, second round, no matter what, he has to fight a Rashid player who's given him trouble in the last couple months. And first round, he runs into somebody who could be a massive landmine. So this is a pretty tough path for Tokido, I think, all things considered, despite being number 1 seed. I think that this is not an unlikely upset. Not even an upset. I don't even think this is an upset. I think this is not an unlikely loss for Tokido. I'm sure that he'll be prepared for the match, but as will Gotch-kun, because this is going to be, or Big Bird. This is going to be a pretty important match for either of them either way, right? Oh, man. It's so hard to put Tokido in the loser's bracket, though. His results so far at Capcom Cup have been 0-2 in second place this year, or in Street Fighter V. Tokido is washed up. Why do people say things like this? Even if you're joking, it just makes me want to hit you. Oil King versus Knuckle Dang. This is a weird one. I think Knuckle in particular usually is pretty good against other Slugfest style players. And when it comes to like very read-based players, this can be kind of tough against Oil King because he's kind of wily. I tend to favor Guile in this matchup pretty heavily, and I tend to think that some Guile players are really good at the matchups, others not so much. Like I think Daigo usually does very well against Rashid. Except the only time I can think of off the top of my head that he didn't was when he lost to Moke last year at Capcom Cup in top 8, but he showed up a little A little Daigo-ish, if you catch my drift. No, Knuckle Dew and Oil King have played this year, and Dew has beaten him, but I think Oil King's also probably beaten him too. This is a tough one to say. I'm going to give the edge to Knuckle Dew. Fudo versus Shanghai. I think character matchup, this favors Shanghai. I think in terms of tournament results, this probably favors Shanghai. Recent results anyway. I think for that reason, I'll probably give the edge to Shanghai here. If he is on point enough to beat CJ, I think that it's likely he's on point enough to gallop through the bracket on winner's side. Socko versus Banchan, I'm going to give the edge to it's a Socko here. I don't really like Banchan's characters that much in the matchup in general, and I think Socko has a pretty good chance to make it far in this bracket. His results this year have been incredibly good, and I think down the line, I like the character matchups for Socko. So I think I'm going to give him the edge here. Old man Socko. He's old and wise, and his execution has not failed him. Fujimura versus Kaaba is a close match, despite their difference in seeds, right? That's what's interesting about Capcom Cup is that you never really use the seeds about, like, as who is, the best player, because fighting games are very, what's it called? They're very styles make fights, right? And so for that reason, stylistically, the first seed and the 32nd seed, you could have the 32nd seed win just because they have a different style or a character matchup or whatever the reason is, right? I think this is a pretty tough match to just give freely to anybody. I think it's pretty close, but I'm going to give the edge to Fujimura, mostly because I have a very strong feeling about his play this year in Capcom Cup in particular. Fujimura he's just pretty stressed by Guile because he's a normal human. All of us get stressed fighting against Guile. NL versus Spunk. I don't know how to feel about this one. I think in my head, I tend to think that in this season, Cammy is much better against Karen than the other way. And I think NL is very, very solid. He hasn't really participated in a tournament in quite some time, right? I feel like I haven't seen him play against a lot of the international competition in a little bit. Feels like he's been kind of put the brakes on in terms of playing lately. Despite that, I think I'm going to give the edge here to Punk has been really, really good lately. I feel like last year, I thought he was going to go super far, and he got 9th, which is not like a bad performance, but not what I expected. This year, I feel like he's going to do great. That's what worries me, right? I'm like, yeah, he'll probably do great this year. I don't know what to call this. It's hard to say because ring rust is real. Punk. Problem versus LCQ, I'm going to give it the Problem. If it's ZJZ, actually, I'd give it to ZJZ. It really depends on who's in this bracket right here. If this is ZJZ, I double Jeopardy'd Problem at Tokyo Game Show, right? That's hard to say. I feel like in your guys' chat bracket, the LCQ winner is fucking winning the tournament in winner's side. Yeah, Justin Wong versus Luffy. I like this character matchup for Mika, actually. I think that I like this character matchup for Mika. Much like my bracket that I made before, I was thinking the same thing, right? Yeah, typically he's not had great results against Mika. I think I would give the edge to Luffy here. Gotchkun versus Knuckle Dew. This is a tough match to call. I think all 4 of these matches are pretty wild, huh? It's weird. This is one of those matchups where I feel like when it comes to fighting against Rashid, Guile has the advantage, but Gotchkun is very, he can handle kind of the matchup, maybe a little bit more prepared for it. Dew is also very feel-based. Winners and put Tokido back in. How dare you put Tokido back in winners right now. I feel like this is going to be a strong year for Japan. If he wins against Oil King, he wins this one. But that's like the crazy Rashid. That's why I gave him the edge, I think. Gotchkun is much more measured. He's good at dealing with the crazy, kind of wild style. I think I'm going to give the edge to Gotchkun here. Shanghai versus Socko is... these guys have played a lot this year. We've seen a lot of high-level Cammy Minot, and a lot of the Minot play has been Socko or Justin, right? I think I'll give the edge here. If Shanghai makes it this far, he's pretty tough to beat. And it's going to be a long day at this point, which I think affects both of them, right? Which for Shanghai, it depends on how on point he is that late. For Socko, it depends on how his execution's looking, his reactions, everything. I'll give the edge to Socko. Fujimura versus Punk. In my head, I was imagining Punk winning here. I don't think his chances are that bad here, actually. But I like Fujimura, I think. Problem X versus Luffy. Luffy has a better chance here against Problem than most people give him credit for. I think almost any of the Europeans versus each other is a toss-up. They've all had, like, it's like Phenom and Luffy and Problem. There's a few players in Europe that have constantly traded who's the best player currently. I think right now Problem is that person, right? So I'm going to give the edge to Problem X here. He is the only non-Japanese player I have in winner's side top 8. All right, we got a lot of catching up to do in losers bracket, huh? Let's start moving. Justin Wong versus Angry Bird. I actually don't think Zeku's that bad against Minot. I guess it depends on how prepared Justin is. I think Justin can do this. LCQ versus Momochi. Let's give it to LCQ. We don't know what the fuck's going to happen. NL versus CJ Truth. We'll give it to NL. The issue with Nemo is that he runs into Kaaba. That matchup is pretty tough for Urian. Right? This is a pretty tough matchup. If Nemo actually runs into Kaaba, this is a pretty tough matchup. I mean, he could go G, but I don't even think that that's like an amazing matchup. It's not awful. This is hard to say. I'm going to give the edge to Nemo. I don't know if that's right, but I'm going to give the edge to Nemo. Banchan versus Xian. Man, I don't even know. It depends on how both of them are playing. Right? Like Banchan on point, Xian on point. It depends. I think both of them are a little on and off. If Xian's in losers early, I think it's not unlikely that he's not playing super hot. Banchan, I feel like it'd be sent to losers because he runs into Socko, which is like not his fault. Fudo versus Daigo. Oh no, how does this happen so early? I'll give the edge to Daigo here. Oh, that sucks. I'm going to give him the edge because of the character matchup and also because it's Daigo. He has Daigo factor. Oil King versus Phenom. This is hard. Phenom is like, they're both a little bit like, they're kind of risk takers as a player. So for this reason, it's like, who do I feel is best at slugging? Oil King's going to have a little bit more control naturally, but like it's hard to say who's going to get the edge in terms of like the little scramble moments. I guess I'll give the edge to Oil King maybe. Tokido versus Mongo. I like Tokido. Back up at the top. Justin versus LCQ. We can't have the LCQ rampage all day, right? The LCQ can't make it forever. I like Father Time. NL versus Nemo. I don't love this matchup for Urian. I think that, and also I don't even know that I think Nemo plays amazingly against Cammy. We'll see how Nemo performs. I'll give the edge here to, NL. Banchan versus Daigo. We're giving it to Daigo. Even if Banchan picks Karen, I think we're gonna give that one to Daigo. Oil King Tokido. Ooh, this could be a double Rashid for Tokido. I actually think that this is not that unlikely. I think he could run. Yeah, this is like his 19th Rashid player that he's run into. It's pretty doable. Losers Big Toke. All right, loser side top 8. Shanghai versus Justin. I think I gave Justin the edge against the Cammy earlier. I think that Shanghai, I'm going to give him the edge here. Just because I feel like if he makes it this far in the tournament, Shanghai will be playing on point. So, yeah, that's going to be tough. This tournament's so stacked. Yeah, it's Capcom Cup. It's always stacked. Knuckle Do versus NL. I'm going to give the edge to Do here. I don't really like NL that much against Skyle. I think Knuckle Do would be fine against Cammy. Luffy versus Daigo, player or character matchup is very tough for Luffy there. That sucks. Mika versus Guile, that is tough. Punk versus Tokido. I'm going to give the edge to Tokido. History is there. Losers bracket Tokido is there. He's probably the favorite there. All right, winners. Gotch-kun versus Socko. I don't think Rashid is that bad against Minot. He used to be amazing. I think he's not that bad against Minot. But in this version of the game, I think I'd give the edge to Socko. Despite how far I have Gotch-kun making it, I think I'm going to give the edge to Socko. This one's, I don't know. These two have had a lot of sets in the year, I feel like. They've kind of gone back and forth. I mean, naturally, right? Both of them are two of the best placing players the entire year, so they sort of run into each other quite a bit. Fujimura beat Problem X, what was it? Red Bull? And I think he beat him at Canada Cup too, didn't he? Problem X. Oh, whoops, Fujimura. Okay, losers bracket. All right. Shanghai versus Knuckle Doodang. This is a lot of history in this match. Knuckle Doo historically never lost to him until E-League. And then he lost to him there. That was kind of when Doo was not playing his best, right? I think now Doo's playing a little bit better. I'm going to give him the edge there. Daigo versus Tokido. Ooh, Man, I hope this happens somewhere in the bracket. In my bracket, it ends up happening here, but I hope we get to see them play. I think I'd give it to Tokido. All right, Problem X versus Knuckle Dude. They've played a lot this year, too, now that I think about it. I feel like I've seen them play at least 3 or 4 times. Character matchup-wise, I think Knuckle Dude probably has the edge. This one's 50-50. This is America bias or not, right? Whether I have America bias or not. Gotch-kun versus Tokido. I like Tokido in the run back. America bias. I can't pick Knuckle Dude. That's American bias. So I'll just pick him. Yeah, I'll give it to Dude. I'm going to give the edge to Tokido. All right. Winners finals. Isn't this what I had before? I feel like this is what I had in the other bracket too. I'm going to give it to Fujimura. I'm going to give the Tokido. I'm going to give Capcom Cup to Fujimura, I think. Socko has the power of family. You think family can stand up to the Satsui no Hado? Have you ever played Street Fighter? This man's going to be like, boom, and hit him with the fucking 2-hit DP hard knockdown. You think a family can save you from a hard knockdown? I like Fujimura to make it very far. You guys are all convinced because Tokido's going to... You guys are all, oh yeah, Tokido's going to be... Yeah. Fucking guys. All right, I'll let you guys make your bracket.